He told me to get goats. And I've been forever thankful to this man for telling me to get goats because my podcast got a lot more popular when I started telling the goats on the roof stories, which you can listen to on your own. But anyway, Nick, well, let's learn from some of your wisdom.
Cool. Thank you. All right. So a lot of y'all have probably been wondering, like, where's Nick been? He's not been on the podcast, not been on the expert council for like 6 months. I've been freaking everywhere. I think I've been to 30 something states since July 2nd. And for a couple months before that, it was just nothing but logistics, trying to herd cats. And then right before I left on this first like 7,000, was this 7? Yeah, this was 7,000 miles in 5 weeks. This section right here, this is what I call the stress-inducing sprint. This right here was, I think it was 8 days nonstop. It was ugly drive. No, it was like right up through the Central Valley, up 5. It was not pretty. And it was, I think it was like 12 stops in 8 days. It was intense. This right here, this was one of the most beautiful places in the world I have ever been to. Jaw-dropping. Anyways, right before this trip, we found out we're expecting number 4 end of February. So we're all excited about that. But I came here to talk about homestead design. And, you know, unless you're blind, there are some things going on that ought to be concerning you. And history doesn't always repeat, but it rhymes. And I like to be a little bit better prepared. I like, yeah, anti-fragile. That's a really good term. I want to see things like this in the lives of everyone in the TSP community. I want to see fat, happy cows. I want to see, people embracing regenerative and resilient systems and designing things like a couple of these heroes of mine. So I'm going to approach this topic. I was just on over 50 people's properties over the last like 4 months. So it's been like this nonstop thinking about design science, nonstop interacting with clients, seeing where people are stumbling, where they're tripping, where their uncomfortable pinch points are. And some of the things are almost all of these things are exactly the same with every single person. And so when you're looking at your property, I want you to take a minute the next time you're out there and just looking at it. I want you to step back and I want you to kind of walk through this in your own mind. Write it down if you need to. I want you to not do what a lot of people do wrong. What I've done wrong year after year is you find something, a cool thing on YouTube that gets popularized and you're like, I've got to have that thing. I've got to have a swale. Why do you need to have a swale? Well, because it's really cool. Is it going to be a waste of your time and money? I always ask people, where are you on that pucker factor? From I'm an ostrich, the world is peachy, it's always going to be peachy. I would imagine that 100% of the TSP audience is not at that 1-2 scale. I have met some people in the TSP audience who are at that 10. But most people, and I'm probably in the 6-7 region, around there. Yeah, 6-7, right? So I want you to think about, in 5 to 10 years, what do you want your property to be producing for you? I don't want you to think about next week. I want you to think about the end goal. Where do I want to be? What are the things that I need out of this property? So you start with the end in mind, and then you work backwards from there. That's what I do with all of my clients, and it works so smooth, they don't even realize what has happened. And then all of a sudden, there's this whole plan laid out for the next 5 to 10 years. And they're like, how did I never think of that? Because we started with the end in mind. Another thing that a lot of people do, I touched on that just a second ago, they start with the details, and then they work backwards into the patterns. And what happens is you've got a chicken coop here, and I've got a goat barn out there, or I've got, well, there was this amazing deal on goats that I couldn't pass up, so I got goats before I had fence that was sufficient to keep goats in. And then you end up with goats where you don't want them. Goats that might give you great stories, but gave you an ulcer in the process. So, yeah, right? So inverting those two things really, really will get you in trouble. And then those major goals. So once you have that major goal, then what we can do is we can build a strategy to get you from point A to point B. And then within that strategy, then we start implementing tactics to take care of the next step and the next step and the next step to get us to where we need to go, right? So tactics. Jack and I have talked about this before at other events. Tactics and strategy are not the same thing. If my strategy is a regenerative, very resilient, perennial tree crops structured system where I'm raising premium pork products, right? Well, then I want bacon trees. Well, if I want bacon trees and I'm in most areas of the country, well, one of the really great things I can do to implement on my landform are swales. It's not always, but a lot of the time, swales would be great. And then, so the tactics, right? The tactics would be, how do we build a swale properly? I don't want these 90-degree angles. I want it smooth. I want it non-erosive. I'm paying a lot of money to move that dirt. I don't want you to pay a lot of money to move dirt, and you got these 90-degree angled sides to this ditch, and then they all collapse down in, and you have this muddy mess. Yeah, nature will level it back out, but it might take you 5-10 years before that kind of solidifies and gets into a healthy situation. And then half of your volume is just gone because you didn't build it right. So understanding those tactics and implementing them well is really helpful. And then a lot of people will ask, you do this all over the USA, outside the USA, is it different every single time? No, it's pretty much the same every single place. The only differences are, if you think about it like a painter, you've commissioned this painter and you say, I want a landscape of the mountains at sunset. Okay, there's going to be oranges and pinks and stuff. Another person's like, no, I don't like sunsets. I like a mountain, river going into a lake, and I want this water features and blah, blah, blah. Okay, but they're all the same in some way or another. So look for successful examples in your climate type, and look for inspiration from those other successful examples, and then just pick and choose from the things that really resonate with you. All right. I want to get into questions a little bit more, so I'm just going to leave this up here for just a second. Is everyone pretty comfortable with the strategy versus the tactics, or do y'all want me to cover that anymore? Pretty good? Fantastic. Let's look at the property. I've just got some shots here. I'm just going to kind of flip through these. This is the topo overlaid on the satellite imagery right here. This is just LiDAR imagery. This stuff is freaking amazing. Ryan Steva is the one that made this for me because I was too busy. If you want information on this, get a hold of Ryan Steva.
So this isn't the SketchUp Google Earth trick where you can get the topo. This is somebody else's.
I think he's using that. I don't know exactly. Yeah, great. All right, so property entrance is from the north here. Comes along here, and this is where we're going to enter the property. You see this nice ridge form right here? I always want to keep my roads on ridges. We're going to get into that in a minute. So here's drone footage. There's the entrance. And I just overlaid this, right? So we got kind of the top-down satellite imagery in the top right. Now it's in the top left. This is that kind of middle, weird, triangular kind of piece. This is a nice little spot for a starter house. The slope comes downhill like this. So here are our contours, like this. There's a little tiny frog pond kind of thing, more of an ephemeral pond down there, which can be developed. So we're just assessing this. We're just kind of taking this in, looking at what is available. This is what we would do with every single consult. We're going to look at the landform. We're going to talk about the goals. We're going to assess things. We got power right here. So if we need grid-tied power, if that's going to make sense, we've got it right here. That is going to significantly impact how we develop this property. Because if we've got to bring it to a far part of the property, it's going to be a lot more expensive versus if we can drop directly off of there and build something right here, for instance. We've got a little pond. And this is the bottom 8.5 acres. We've got a beautiful little saddle here. If you're ever hearing people talk about this kind of permaculture stuff, you might hear that term, a saddle. This is the low point in between this hill, this slope, and then this little hilltop right here. We can see that on the topo right here. It pinches down to here, and then there's drainage down here, and there's drainage down here. This is one of the biggest oak trees I've ever seen, and this is another one right here. Some of the biggest oaks I've ever seen in my lifetime. I'm talking like the trunk goes from me to behind Jack. Huge, beautiful oaks. Yeah, easy 300-year-old tree. So we always need to define our goals and our needs. I've dealt with permaculture people who have said, I'm not going to name names, but they're like, bro, these trees have been here for so much longer than you. Maybe instead of cutting them down and making them into a house or a barn or something, you should just maybe look at living somewhere else. I'm like, guys, that's not permaculture ethics. We have to take care of the people. So taking care of people, we need housing. There's nothing on here. It is pasture with so leaning to non-functional fencing. So we're going to have to add fencing. But housing, primary need, water. We've got to have water. Rain catch is not going to cut it here with the amount of roof I'm going to be able to put in. Power. Power is going to be pretty dang easy. So is water. Because of my goals, or this imaginary client's goals, food security is basically the top goal for this client. I want to be able to feed my family. I want to be able to shut the gates on my property for a couple of years and not be forced to leave to be able to feed my family. So animal feed. I have to be able to raise all of my animal feed on site, livestock, because we want to eat primarily carnivore. So let's do a little bit of site assessment. Again, don't have the time to get into a ton of details, so we're just going to give some broad picture ideas here. So we've got our slope. We've got this ridge right here. We've got water catchment here. We've got some water catchment already existing. I don't have to do anything to utilize either of these. They can be improved, but that's really low-hanging fruit. Right off the bat, I have water for livestock. I have some irrigation water. If I spend a little bit of extra time and money, if we are shoestringing things, so if this is, we just have to live with what we've got, it doesn't take a whole heck of a lot to improve both this and this. This one would be really cheap and easy to improve, stupid easy to make that catch about double the amount of water that it currently is catching. And we've got really nice slope. It's not too steep. We've got about 40 feet of elevation change from the high point on the property to the lower regions, give or take.
What's the elevation switch between those?
5 feet. 5 feet on those contour lines. So access. We need to. Here's another thing that I see people do all the time is they will start throwing design elements into their landscape and not consider access, especially future access. So that's why I say I don't want to encourage people to just dream and not do anything. But if you don't have a vision for a good deal of time into the future, if you don't know how that could pan out, you can't even paint a picture for how you want it to pan out, then you will end up painting yourself into corners. You'll end up making type 1 errors that you can't get around it. You're going to have to run a road clear around a building when the road should have been right where the building went. So we need to think about those things. We need to think about these roadways. I will spend 30 minutes with the client. One of the first things we'll be looking at is the driveway entrance. And they'll say, this is where we're going to put the driveway. And I'll say, why there? And they'll say, well, it's already open. That's where the last person was using it. You ever heard that story about that, or is a poem? Who wrote that poem about the wayward calf? There's a poem about this calf that makes a track through the woods. And then the next people followed that path of that calf. And it just wandered and meandered up and down and curved all around. And then it became a cart path. And then it became a motorized vehicle path. And then it became an interstate. All because this one calf took that path. And I don't want to see y'all do that with your homesteads, with designing your properties, especially if this is a new property to you and you're about to put $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 into a driveway, which adds up quick. I've saved clients 50 grand moving it 20 feet to the left. And then an innumerable number of hours into the future on maintenance because we moved it from where there's already existing signs of erosion. So we know we've got a lot of water flow across this one spot versus we move it over here and now it's on top of a ridge. We can perfectly crown so that the only water flow going across this gravel road is the stuff that falls directly on top of it. So anytime we can stick to features like this, like that, which is a ridge, that is always better. Because anytime we have water approaching our driveway from one side, we have to gutter it, we have to ditch it, we have to do something with that, and then we're always going to have that ditch silting in. That means we're always going to have maintenance. And the fewer instances that I can design that into my landscape, the more numbers of hours that we are excluding from future consumption by maintenance.
Just a quick note.
Yes.
This is 5-foot contour. That's almost enough. If you're on the land, you can get by with it. I prefer 2 foot on this. And it can be worth it to pay to get it. But a lot of people will get stuck with a lot of people will get stuck with 10 foot or even 10 meter contour stuff.
No, that's almost useless.
And it's useless.
Yeah.
So at that point, it pays you to get somebody to pull the LiDAR data and to get you a topo. 5 feet for this would be minimum I would want to see. I would actually prefer 2 feet on this if I were doing professional design work on it.
Right. Yeah, I specifically asked Ryan for 5 feet because I didn't want this to get too noisy. I wanted you to get a concept of it. But if we are really working on this, 2 feet, in some instances, if we're doing detailed stuff and we have decent LiDAR data, 1 foot intervals are really nice because you can tell a lot. Solar aspect. Most of this over here is facing due south. All of these images I have oriented north-south. So just keep that in mind. So water and power systems. Something I always try and bring to the forefront is don't let perfect be the enemy of good. I don't want you to get so stuck into, I have to have it this certain way, so I have to have it that way now. We can always work towards the ideal. You can always start with, I hate saying it, but like synthetic fertilizers, GMO, big box store garden plants, and big box store bagged garbage soil, and you can start gardening with that. That is much better than trying to start and digest all of the learning curves of starting your own seeds, making your own compost, doing all that beyond organic, perfect, uber amazing. I'd rather see you start with the less ideal and get those learning curves under your belt and transition into the ideal. So I'm following my own advice. I would love to be completely off-grid solar. That might not be the ideal for this situation. I'm actually talking to Sean later this weekend about that. Sean is my electrical systems consultant. Sean Mills. Heck my Homestead. Yeah. So off-grid solar, fantastic. I would love to have totally off-grid solar. The easy button, I'm probably going with grid power. Large battery bank, so I could handle a week of no sunlight. That would be amazing. Not going to happen. So a couple deep cycle batteries, so I can handle stuff if I got to run a box fan overnight. That's really easy. Just about everybody can do that. We've got some backup generators. I don't need a big, 20 kW generator. Rain catch, so we could have some beautiful, nice, soft water. That would be lovely. That is on my agenda. That is a big goal. But we're probably just going to have to go with the municipal water at the very end of their water line system. But I would like to have a very large cistern. So don't let the ideal get you stuck and consume a bunch of your resources when you can get there eventually. All right, so let's talk about access and infrastructure. I've got some things marked down here. This area in yellow. I mean, that is not an insignificant amount of land, but when it comes to the overall land usage, and we'll get into some of those figures a little bit later, we'll touch on them because we're going to run out of time. That there is something to be said for aesthetics and bringing joy to the people that you have stewardship over. And so my family, my wife, I want to bring joy to her life. So this area is most likely being allocated to nothing but a wildflower meadow. It's not going to be that much. There's already some trees on it. We can see a cluster of trees here. So this is just going to be really pretty. We might end up fencing it later, but I want you to look at how much linear footage of fence I will have to run for just this little bit of pasture. It is not that much. It's probably not going to be worth it to fence that because I have to bring my driveway in right here. This is my only egress My only ingress and egress on this property really is right there. So I have to bring it here. It has to be on this ridge line because otherwise I'm going to have a lot of maintenance woes, or I'm going to have to truck in a whole bunch of material to make a new ridge line. And I don't want to have to make a new ridge line. I'd rather just use what we've got in place. So we could just build a nice big house right here, but I don't have $500,000 laying around. So we're probably building something more along the lines of what Patrick has started out with on his new homestead. Something little, something to meet our needs. We're going to line it in lace bark elms because I love lace bark elms. They're really hardy. They're gorgeous. It's going to keep our driveway a lot cooler once they canopy out. It's going to help keep the dust down. It's going to be very nice. Looking over here, let's step over here a little bit. We've got opportunities for water catchment on these sides. We can expand this out. So none of this is set in stone. And I want you to keep that in mind. Just because we make a plan does not mean it must be set in stone and we can never deviate from it. I think once you have an overarching strategy, it does need to be relatively solid, but that doesn't mean it's permanent and can never be changed. You just need to really spend some time assessing whether or not that is something that's just a whim or if that's a really good thing to switch and change.
We have people come in and ask us for a master plan.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, I refuse to create you a master plan.
I don't like them either.
You a seed plan. So we use the word seed plan now to get them with the idea that this is the seed from which things will grow.
I love it.
Means you expect it to change, and if it doesn't change, you failed.
Right. Yes. So here, this is a nice, relatively flat. There's a little bit of slope. What I would love to implement, again, I'm not going to let perfect be the enemy of good, but if I had my ideal setup, these greenhouses here would be benched into the soil. I would have them earth sheltered, lots of southern exposure to them, but these would be benched in, and then my grow out area would be just to the downhill, to the south. All of that fertility is flowing downhill. I get to harvest that stuff and move it up and out of the way. Over here, I want a poultry barn. I want my poultry barn situated in a place where I can dump my birds out into an area that they can harvest by themselves, manage, maintain, where I can have livestock guardian dogs to protect them. So I can segregate this whole side. I can fence up here, and I can fence along this swale right here, which is going to be a natural delineation. And all of this on this side, the whole fodder system area can all be fenced in, protected by livestock guardian dogs. Because guys, these mulberry trees and willows, they are deer candy. Everything that likes to eat leaves likes to eat them. So you have to protect them or they will be obliterated. Roads on ridges, we got that. Structure orientation. Oops. Head back. Structure orientation, we've got nice southern exposure. I would really like to have a large building that's going to have a really nice amount of rain catchment on that. So I can dump that into a cistern. So I'm putting that into my big overarching goal. That's not happening anytime soon. But if I don't know where that needs to happen, I can't design and function and operate in the intervening years. So that has to go in here. Housing right here, we're probably, I don't need it in my climate, but if we do need livestock housing, I don't want it right next to my house. I understand the permaculture zones and everything. I am totally fine with our overarching family structure the way we're designing things, having things spread out a little bit. I typically don't go for this, but this property, because of its layout, because of its structure, it is probably, and because of what we want, how we want to live our lives. I don't want those birds right on top of us. I don't like hearing them. I don't want my livestock right on top of us. I want them a little bit further out. So we're pushing that a little bit further out. This is going to make for very easy access, trucking animals out. And when we get into the numbers a little bit later, you'll understand why I'm doing that. Phased implementation. You know, that is what I'm talking about with all of these things, where it's going to cost some extra money. I don't have the thousands of trees to put in there right now. I just lost quite a few thousand this summer while I was gone. That just happens. So let's look at what could things look like. Here's that ridge coming down, right? Here's that ridge coming down right here. There's actually the remnants right behind this structure. That's some amazing artwork style. I'm very proud of that. There's the remnants of a terrace right there. So I have on the uphill side, upgrade from this possible building site, I have water catchment where I can divert overland water flow so I don't have water flowing up against or running underneath my structure, running up against a driveway parking. I don't want to see stuff like that. And then I threw this blue line for the swale down right there, just to keep y'all oriented. Food production. So, like I said, food security. This is my main goal, my main focus. I want to be food secure on my property at the end of 3 years from now. I want to be able to produce 100% of our caloric needs on this property within 3 years. So to that end, I'm not getting into all these numbers. I wanted people to be able to see this. We have some lamb. We just have 7 that we're going to be harvesting in the first year. 19 by the second year. 99 by the third year. These are ideal numbers. I am not saying that this will actually be the numbers that we're experiencing, but using Cornell's star breeding system and St. Croix lambs, this is a reasonable to ideal outcome.
That's total pounds of meat for 7? Or per lamb?
For 7. Okay. That's the total.
That's total.
Yep. 37 pounds of dressed meat. Again, I'm using averages here. Don't hold me to any of these numbers. Your results are going to vary. A Muscovy duck is normally going to dress out around 4 pounds. Depends on how long you go. So I've calculated up. These are all estimates, right? These are estimates. This is my calories. Again, estimates. So, you know, we're raising 6 pigs. That's staying consistent. We're raising 2,000 quail a year. That's going to be consistent. We love eating quail, and they're really simple and easy. And with black soldier fly larva and the white mulberry and the duckweed, we'll get into that. All those things make quail very, very viable. Dexter beef, we're not getting anything. We might get 1 male that we can harvest in year 2. Probably not. And maybe 2 in year 3. But the big thing that we're going to be pushing to start out with is lamb, because they reproduce so fast. We love the meat. Oh my gosh, the lamb Jack made. You need to, you've got to get that rub recreated. You've got to get that rub recreated. All right, we're starting small. Yeah, I'm going to make myself hungry. We just ate lunch. Rabbits, quail, pigs. Listen, I understand running your pigs in pasture. I understand running them in the forest. I am probably, because of my situation, the setup, and what I can do, and what I don't want to see happen to nice, beautiful, established pasture, as I don't want these pigs wrecking it. So they're going in Korean natural farming, more of a confinement situation. where I'm importing and exporting all that bedding. They're going to be happy. It's going to be a healthy, safe environment for them, and we're going to get really good production. Perimeter fencing, like I said, we're adding St. Croix sheep, and we're phasing in Dexter cattle. They are a breed that's about half the size of a typical like Angus or Hereford or whatever. I love Dexters. It's going to play very well into agrotourism later on. And there's a growing demand for Dexter breeding stock in the homesteading community. So one of my big things, like Nicole was talking about, one of those big products is that I want to be exporting here are Dexter breeding stock, as well as the St. Croix. So we're just going to be adding those every year. I'd like to buy about 2 bred cows every year to add in. So I'm adding in genetic diversity. I can get a little bit of genetic diversity from there, a little bit from there, a little bit from there. And then I have a very nice, diverse genetic herd. I've got some really good stuff from here and here and here. I've got a little bit of dairy character from that one, a little bit of beef character from this one, so on and so forth. Mixed path. So this is with the lamb and the beef. I just want you to just see some of these numbers, how it steps up year after year. This is my meat yield in pounds per year, right? So it's not very much here. That's a lot more. And we're really cranking it up, all because of those sheep. That's my sheep. And then we can just step stuff down, and then we can sell breeders with all of the excess production. The further we get into this, the more we are able to choose, pick and choose. Do we want to eat mostly lamb because we just love it? Do we want to eat mostly beef because we just love it? I don't do most of the cooking, my wife does. So a lot of it's going to come down to, does she even want to deal with the lamb? Or does she I just like cooking beef. Okay, babe, we're ramping up the cows. Doesn't matter to me. They're both going to produce meat. But here's the big thing, because I want resiliency. So if there's a drought, I want something that's going to produce a high protein content leaf matter in the summertime when my grass protein content drops down single digits, 4%. You can actually have cattle starving to death on low protein pastures with their rumens full because they just don't have enough protein. So instead of buying soybean meal, I'm going to be growing soybean trees, which are white mulberry. These are average numbers. I've got you a range. The fresh matter, 13 to 16 tons per acre per year is a decent range. Dry matter, because a lot of the stuff that you're going to see is going to deal with dry matter. So I pulled those numbers for you. It can be closer to like 3 or 4 on the low end, but I've seen numbers higher up to like 12 tons of dry matter per acre per year out of irrigated, well-managed mulberry. And these are white papers that I'm pulling these data points from. Tree hay. Yep. So we're talking about animal units per acre per year. 1 to 1.8 extra animal units per acre per year using white mulberry. I'm not going to get into all this stuff because I want to save some time, but I want y'all to just see how our numbers go down. Now, if you really dig into the numbers, it's pretty dang close. The acreage that I'm consuming by using the white mulberry versus if I just use that as pasture, because we get 44 inches of rain in East Texas. So we're going to have some really good pasture utilization. But what I want you to understand is I've got these rows of trees, and in between those rows of trees, are grass and forbs. And I can be running a lot of animals in tractors. And we're going to talk about function stacking here in just a minute. But I can be function stacking on that same 5 acres to a crazy degree. So again, some more boring numbers, but man, I was just geeking out on this. This is so exciting to me. If this is not your cup of tea, well, you can drink coffee. I just love this stuff. I'm just going to skip past this because I want to get into more questions. Here's something really, really cool I want y'all to see. So starting out, this is animal units. Animal units is a really good concept to understand. We don't talk about, all my clients ask, well, how many fill in the blank animal, sheep, can I run on this pasture? I can't answer that. It's too dynamic. I can get you pretty dang close to it, but it's going to be a whole bunch of the, well, it depends. And we're going to have to drill down into the specifics. Are we talking about Dorpers, or are we talking about St. Croix? If we're talking about sheep, we're talking about cows. Okay, what kind of cows? Right? So those numbers change, but here's a really, really nice number to utilize, and that's animal units, AU. And it's basically 1,000-pound cow with a calf is going to use 1 animal unit. And so if we just crunch that number down, we can apply that same animal unit measurement relatively consistently across other grazing species. But what that tells us, when I crunch the numbers on this, is we should be capping out for our family's needs at about 20 acres of pasture, or 20 animal units out of 40. So we're using half of our land. That means whatever numbers we're looking at, we can crank that up by at least 2x. That's really cool. I talked about duckweed, lemna minor or lemna major. Duckweed, really exciting. We're talking like 40% protein. That is right up there. Not equivalent to, but pretty dang close to soybean meal. Soybean meal is normally going to be around, what, 55%, 60? 55, 60, that's great. But when we're talking about growing it ourselves with low inputs, recycling on our own property, this stuff is amazing. So I want to put that on your map. We're talking about function stacking just a second ago. We've got quail in a tractor here. We've got rabbits in a tractor here. I can run those right in between these all day long. And if I'm feeding my rabbits white mulberry leaf, well, I'm standing right there. I grab a handful of it, snip it off, drop it right in the cage to all my grow outs. So we went over all of our housing. We placed our items down, right? We understand how our contours are running. We're planning out some locations to catch some water, right? We've got our livestock feed plan. We have the basics. A good, like you said, a seed, a starting vision for how this all lays out. So I'm going to open it up for questions. We got what? 10, 15 minutes.
All right. Who has a question for Nick? We just got to get him a second.
This one.
Yeah, real simple. Where are the goats?
Where are the goats?
Yeah.
On the roof.
On the roof. So I like goats just fine. I don't just pick animals because I like them. I choose them to serve a purpose, and I also want to implement design elements. Goats would be a design element in my lexicon. Cattle would be a design element. I want to implement those design elements when they are appropriate and when they progress my end purpose and goals. I don't want to just choose to do something because it sounds like a good idea. It actually has to be analyzed and assessed and move the needle. And so the needle that I'm trying to move is not goat meat, because while they're fine for meat, because this is 98% open pasture, and it's good pasture, goats are going to be less advantageous, especially in this climate, than something like sheep or cattle. And we don't like eating goat meat. We do like eating beef, and we like eating lamb. So goats could be utilized here. It will be better to use something that is going to lean more towards kind of that finished pasture. If this was brushy land, I would absolutely be starting with goats. But they would be being utilized to convert it into the kind of pasture it is now. So that's why I would be using goats. But because it's already there, I don't need to use that brush clearing focus or product that the goats would be bringing to the table.
I'm going to ask a question before Diego. So when you get this up to full production, have you assessed how many additional helpers you might need to keep it running?
Yes. I'm working on helper number 4, but no,
but seriously. Yeah.
But absolutely, seriously, I am. Once we get on site, I'm going to be opening things up for summer interns, and as we'll see how that goes. If I have a really good intern, finish that summer and want to stay on as an apprentice, one of my overarching goals in the next 10 years is to step away from consulting, and I want to be training people to handle all of the consulting that comes my way, because my overarching goal, like you talked about, is I want to be on this land with my family, not traveling. I want to be teaching here, training, and sending people out. So I'm going to be looking for interns and apprentices to start learning this stuff and then taking those skills and applying them. And I want to just be feeding those consulting leads.
Kind of along the lines of the goat, I was just wondering, chickens are a great source of protein, and you got the eggs, and they're fairly simple. How come you didn't incorporate any chickens?
The chickens are going to be incorporated over here, but they're not going to be a large focus because the quail are so dang productive. My wife has a little bit of an aversion to like egg yolks, but she loves the quail eggs, yolks included. So we will have some chickens. They're just not a big outstanding feature.
What you just heard there was an answer to how do I integrate my wife into this? I mean, my spouse into this project, right?
Yep.
Right. Well, she likes quail. We grow quail.
Yeah. It meets the same needs. Man, the quail, 2 months from egg to table or egg to more eggs, that's fan-freaking-tastic. And when I can grow a large portion of their feed with black soldier fly larvae and then preserved black soldier fly larvae for winter feed, when I can do that mostly myself, man, that gives me a lot of resiliency to be able to say, all right, I want a really good meat yield 2 months from now to fill in a deficit. I know I've plotted it out. I know I'm going to have a deficit for these months. That means I'm going to track it back. I'm going to be starting X number of eggs this month or this week and this week and this week for this amount of time so that we have all of that extra productivity filled in until we get the lamb up into production.
Where's my dove stand?
Okay.
Dove stand?
Yeah, we all need to have a dove.
I actually want to put a dove coat out here.
That's cool too.
Yeah.
So, Nicole, I tell my design students they didn't realize it when they signed up to be a design consultant. They also signed up to be a marriage counselor.
There's a lot of that goes on.
We've had like 3 questions about that so far.
Yes.
You're talking about your kids. Unfortunately, they like to get older.
Yep.
And they like to move away.
Mm-hmm.
But have you put any thought or like planned anything on if they want to come back and be a part of the land and like they're going to want their own place?
I've been thinking
and-
about that from the moment, actually, from before they were born. I've been instilling into them, and they're going to be their own people. I'm not deluded into thinking that they're going to choose the things that I would like for them for their whole life. Currently, though, from my 14-year-old down to my 10-year-old, all 3 of them are all in on a very tribal mentality. We want to, it's back to back. I'm going to watch your 6, you're going to watch mine. And we want to be neighbors so that we can support each other. So right now, their vision and my vision is for them to be on site. I want to buy more property. It might be we're a mile apart. But my goal is by the time that they're 18, each of my sons, by the time they're 18, we will have, this is the goal, we will have completed, worked together to build a small house and set them up with a business. So I will handle the more technical, legal, financial, marketing, sales, that kind of stuff as they learn the skills and start taking that over. So that by the time they're 20, I want to have a 6-figure plus income job business that basically, think of it like the Flintstones cars, right? You get it pedaling. So I'm the one pedaling while they're just like, their toes are just kind of stumping along. But as they grow and they mature, they're taking over and I can take my feet off and they're just coasting with it. Right. So that's the vision. That's the goal. We'll see how that pans out, though.
So have you, were you planning to build it by yourself using local resources? And if yes, could you talk a little bit about how you're trying to maybe function stack, all that stuff? That would be pretty cool.
Yeah. So I'm looking at a couple different options for housing. I have a bandsaw, and the family land in Louisiana, we have 8 acres of overly mature pine. I mean, we have 120-foot pine trees that are maturing out and successing the forest and just dropping dead. They have to be harvested or else they're just going to be dirt anyways. So the plan is to drop those trees as I have time. If anyone has some of that spare laying around, I would love some extra. But we're going to be dropping those trees, milling them, and then transporting the lumber to Texas. And we still need to talk about house design stuff. But I think everyone should be aware of this really cool resource. It is freefarmhouse.com. Check it out. It's really cool.
Question from online. How do you harvest and store 16 tons of white mulberry per acre?
1 bite at a time. Same way you harvest. Yeah. So I'm going to be prototyping a small scale version of essentially it's going to be like a grape vine trimmer. You can look up grapevine trimmers. These are commercially available all over the world. They're basically big hedge trimmers that are PTO driven, and you drive down a grape trellis and it trims off all the vines. We can implement the exact same harvesting strategy for white mulberry on a smaller scale like this. It's, we can do it manually. Yeah, it's a lot of work, but I have 3 teenage or almost teenage sons. So
It'll be like a mulberry hedge.
yes, basically they get reharvested at about hip height. So they get cut back down and then they regrow, and then we harvest, and we keep regrowing. It's going to look like a miniature Napa Valley. On right here, when you're driving down this driveway, eventually, when you look down these rows, it's going to look like little miniature Napa Valley. From a distance, the mulberry trees, when they're harvested and when they're regrowing, it looks just like grapevines.
Hey, Nick, before you're done, can you give us a quick update on your tissue culture project?
Yes, I haven't had any time this year to devote to tissue culture. If, with the new baby coming, if I have time this winter, I'm going to be getting things rolling with that. That's actually one of the main reasons I'm interested in possibly bringing on an apprentice or an intern, someone to help with that. Before we actually get out here, I do have housing available, private lodging available to utilize. I need someone who is interested in learning that stuff and who is competent enough. He's 14.
You want him to have an income by the time he's 18?
It really comes down to the interest level. Yes. And it's the 14-year-old that went up to there in about 6 months, and he's this. And when we're talking about hazardous chemicals and breakable borosilicate glass everywhere. Yeah.
Are you still going to sell trees this spring?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
RarePlantStore.com.
Every year.
What zone would you say all that stuff is?
All what stuff?
Well, pretty much everything on the right side there going down. Is that zone 3, zone 4? We didn't talk
White mulberry.
I'm sorry.
Permaculture zones.
Everything seems way far away from the house.
Yes. Well, like I said, with the zones, I am planning for a somewhat decentralized because I'm going to need multiple locations on that property for housing. It's basically a zone 2 that's going to be treated a little bit like a zone 3 because the regrowth on the fodder is going to be kind of staged out. So I'd say most of that to the right is going to be about a zone 2 because we're going to be stepping foot on it at least every month to harvest.
Any other
during
questions?
the harvest months.
What's your width between your rose and mulberry?
I'm not 100% positive. I'm still working out my my equipment, just like with harvesting. Yep. So I'm guessing anywhere from 10 is the closest between the rows up to 16 or 20 foot. I'm leaning more towards like 12 to 16 feet in between my rows to give me enough room for the trees to grow out into it, and then also to get enough yield out of the interplanted space to get good forbs and grasses so I can tractor my animals.
Anything else? Let's hear it for Nick Ferguson.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll be back here at 3 o'clock, I think. 3 o'clock with Alan Booker.